Brandi Bragg with NENC Career Pathways. I'm so excited to talk to you about I call it on the ground job situation, but would you take a moment and just introduce yourself?
Like you said, my name is Brandi Bragg. I'm the workforce connector for NENC Career Pathways, which is powered by three workforce development boards. So I work across 20 counties with education, industry, workforce, and community organizations focused on career pathways. How do people get into the jobs that are going to pay well to sustain their families? What kind of training do they need? And what are the opportunities right here in their own backyard?
And Dr. Justin Rose and I have had the honor of getting to work with you, bringing some AI to the topic. But I really want to talk about what's the scene in North Carolina, because now you have people worried about AI taking their jobs. You've got people in small towns at all different levels, from those that have less opportunities on, and we want to get as many of the wonderful people in North Carolina employed. If they're not doing their own business, where the small business centers can help with that, having a sustainable job to take care of their family.
Yeah, we've definitely seen some changes even before, I guess, AI became a big thing around here. We were already seeing the kiosks like at a McDonald's. And so one of the things we've been talking about with career advisors at NCWorks is when you have people who come in and they say, I just want a job, just help me get in at McDonald's. That's okay. You might need that job right now to pay your bills today, but you have to think about what comes next, because McDonald's is going to put in more of those kiosks, which means they're going to need less cashiers. And so, what skills do you have now, and what skills do you need for whatever that next role may be?
That's a great example of how you're seeing the technology changing the job market and getting him to think beyond just, I need a job. And when, you're worried about paying rent, or you're a single parent, and of course what gets me income as fast as possible.
That is really what, most people, when they come into a career center, that's what they're looking for. They're kind of at their wits' end. Something has happened and now they need that other job quickly. But we've really worked hard over the last few years to get our career advisors on board to help these folks think about those next steps, because what you might take right now just to get that rent paid is not what is going to help your family thrive necessarily.
Yeah, and this applies in all fields, because I work at the executive level, as well as small businesses, as well as people that might have had their own business and now they want to transition. My own university closed last year, and I got Dr. Justin Rose and a number of people to volunteer to help them out, because many hadn't been in the workforce for over 10 years, which of course, led to our book, Job Hunting in the AI Era. And it's so important to be thinking of yourself as what I call a product. And then what are the core skills I have, so that it can be more agnostic to the jobs you're doing? And you're very in tune with that. Would you kind of talk about that? Because I think this is more critical at all levels. If I'm a product, what are those core skills I have? And then how many different opportunities or needs can I fill instead of just a job?
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to talk about that like transferable skills, right? Because a lot of times, especially with younger people, they will say, I can't have a resume. I've not had a job. Well, if you have been a volunteer, you've been part of a club, you have learned some skills that will transfer to a job that you could still put on your resume. And that's true for all of us, no matter what types of jobs we've had. So for example, if you have a job seeker who says, I've only ever worked in fast food, there's really nothing else I can do. Well, that's not true at all. If you've worked in fast food, you know how to communicate well, you can handle conflict resolution, you've got some good time management skills. So there's a lot of those transferable skills that you may not have done it in an office setting before, but you've done that skill and you've proven that you know how to do it through your last role.
So talk about what you're seeing today, beyond the great example of McDonald's is it, but what you're seeing with how people are handling this, because if you listen to the news, you think every job's going to go away by AI. So it's got to be creating more anxiety in people. And how are you addressing and communicating that, especially if they say, do I need these skills? Do I need AI skills?
Yeah, there's a lot of hype out there about AI and how it's going to take all of these jobs. But like you and I both know, AI is only as good as what you're putting into it, as the human piece that you're adding to it. So uh, I try to calm people down about that and really focus on how they can use AI to make their job easier for them and help them, just make it better. I myself have cut down the amount of time I spend doing the things that I need to do because I've learned how to use AI appropriately. And that's one of the things that we've been really trying to work with our career advisors on, working with our partners in education and industry. Dr. Justin Rose actually came and did a session at our last annual guidance retreat, which had, people from K-12, community colleges, community partners, and really just talked with them about how do you use these skills with AI to make your job a little better and make it even more interesting maybe than it used to be. So I think we just have to keep talking to folks about how you use it. Personally, I have sat down with a lot of my friends and colleagues and just shown them how you use it. Here's my chat GPT. Watch me ask it to do this. And then when it does it like that, they're like, whoa, what are you kidding me? And then they go home and play with it. And then they're in love.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. The commitment of getting the entire staff and all the people involved. Let's get them training. Let's get them understanding the boundaries. Let's get them understand the ethics of it. And that's something North Carolina is working right now to do so people can use it, not just be completely afraid of it, but also not be reckless with it. And you're right on board with that, as well as things going on at the state level on this to go, okay, the analogy Justin and I like to use is the entire ocean is changed. Now you can either tell people no one can swim or surf, or we can learn how to teach them how to safely surf in this new ocean. And I think that's the most important, because if you don't, they're going to be doing it on the side, and that's where the highest risk can occur.
I think that's a great analogy. I mean, I think a lot of people, when people started talking about AI, they were like, I'm just not going to use it. And my point to them is it's not going away. So you not using it isn't going to keep it from becoming more popular. It's just going to put you behind the curve of what's out there and how do I make this work for me. So having some knowledge, even if you are a little scared of it, which we have seen in some of the trainings that you guys have done, people start off and they're like, oh, I'm scared to touch it. But by the end of it, they're like, okay, I think I can do a little something with it now.
We love to get them started on something as simple as open your refrigerator. What do you have sitting in there? Type it in, say, give me several dishes I can do in 20 minutes. I mean, you got to find those non-threatening things. And as you know, Justin and I have a commitment to North Carolina being a leader in the ethical, effective, and profitable use of AI. And so that involves your area, that involves small towns and counties, that involves professionals and associations. Everyone needs to be working on board of understanding it and also working together with helping each other use it. I just did something with a team I have that meets once a week on technology on Notebook LM. They weren't as big sports fanatics. So we did a Super Bowl game meeting and went over it, and that's where you're going to learn it, where you get some people safely into groups and starting to have discussions, and there were challenging questions on it, and I went, well, let's try it. And that's the important thing that you understand is you got to get in on non-critical material and test it and kind of push the limits of it. Don't take something critical. Don't take key things that work and do it offline a little bit with the correct free versions and then take it from there.
And I really love, you mentioned how important it is to be ethical. I love that you guys put that into your training so much, because to me, that is really the most important piece. We have people out there who have access to other people's personal information. And so making sure they understand that they can't put that out there. And even their own personal information, like how careful they should be in sharing that as well. So I'm glad that we're seeing the focus on ethics. And like you said, at the state level, they've got a commission and they're looking at how are they going to lay all of this out as far as the ethics and how it can be used by state workers.
Yeah, because I was around when they started to create the first social media policies. In fact, I was one of the, in 2009, I wrote one of the first books on using social media, and I realized we need policies with that, because it's easier to have a policy where an employee comes in on it than change that midterm once they're there. And then a few years ago, Justin and I realized we need AI policies. And now it's starting to implement. I remember there was someone in our class that we said, like the town needs an AI policy. And someone in the class goes, my husband works for the city. I need to call them and ask them if they have it. But you're working for that even with your people, so they know what it is. And the importance of what I'd say is transparency with it. Don't just use it and throw it out, especially with someone hunting for a job. If they use it and misrepresent themselves and they show up in person and they don't have any of the skills, they're done. They're off the list. So talk a little bit about that, because if you had anyone go, well, I can just do this and push my resume through and make myself look better, bigger than I am. And what would you do if you haven't? Tell them to say, slow down a little bit. It's not bad to use. And make sure you keep that human in the loop.
Yeah. Well, to your point, Martin, people were already expounding on their resumes before AI came around and not being able to necessarily speak to their resume when they got in the interview. So it's not really a new problem. We just have some technology to continue that problem. But yeah, people are doing that regularly. They're giving themselves, or just throwing some information in there and taking whatever output comes and not reviewing it and then sending it off to people, which is a really bad idea. So we do, in any of the trainings that we do, we try to talk about how important it is that you are reviewing anything that you are sending out and putting your name on, just like you typed it up yourself, because you can use this tool to help make it easier, but that doesn't mean that tool always has it right. It will give you sources that aren't correct. It will give you jobs probably that you didn't really have. So that's really important as far as how people are displaying themselves when they're going out to employers. I haven't personally seen, I've used AI with people to upgrade their resumes, but because I'm very careful about it, I haven't really seen somebody get in trouble with it yet personally. But I've seen online some very interesting stories about people just shooting off these resumes that they've just kind of taken out and thrown in. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with HR, right? Because you've got all of these applicant tracking systems that are looking for different things. And my understanding is they're starting to look for whether you used AI or not. And so it'll be interesting to see where all of that goes.
Well, one thing I know from a neighbor almost a year ago is he works with AI programmers in it. And he was going, we're just going to work on referrals. We're getting so much bad stuff with people that can't even speak to what it is. Now, in your area, the way I would say is, just like in the old school stuff before AI, make sure you can speak on an interview about what you're good with and what your skills are. So you're focusing on what are your fundamental skills, or as you call transferable skills, and then being comfortable speaking on them. That's what was useful before and probably more important now than ever. And I think that's great that you're getting them to focus. What are those transferable skills? Because are you thinking just the job to get rent, or would you like rent next year too, and the one after it, or be out looking for the next job because you didn't think of those extra steps? I think that's a very important aspect of what you all do.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point about being able to speak to what's in your resume, that's where AI can help as well. We've seen some great like mock interview kind of stuff using the voice versions, or even just being able to print out questions or come up with questions that somebody might ask you if you're applying for this job based off of the job description. Not that we couldn't do that stuff before, but AI just makes it so much easier to be able to tailor it the way that, works for people.
Yeah, I want to talk about another advantage of what you said there because I've learned when people are scared and they're looking for a job, it's easy to get defensive. They're afraid, they're worried, and so forth. And when you can sit with someone and say, let's see what AI would ask as a question, it kind of takes it out of the offensive mode. And that was something I didn't expect until we started working with it. And it was a shop owner that started using it in role playing with prospective employees of how they'd handle a customer. And he said, they actually had more fun with it and it didn't seem as he was challenging them. So they were more receptive. And I think that's something else you'll probably be finding is as we can work with it as a tool, that it might be more receptive. I'm trying to think of the right words for this, but what I've learned teaching all over the state and growing up in DC and others is when people are really scared and they're worried about being on the street, they don't know who to trust. So it's easier to get offended, easier to be defensive. It's just that human nature. And the more you can put them at ease or give them a tool that helps them, the faster they'll get back on their feet.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about too, like career advisors and teachers, they only have a certain amount of time they can spend with people to work on these things. But with AI, you can go home and work on your interview skills and learn from the AI tool what it is that you need to be practicing. So it really just gives people more opportunities than they might have had in the past for that.
Talk a little bit about the role playing because we're real proud of that technique and we're excited how you guys have been using it. But that's something of all things we tested that out. We're always trying something, and it was funny because it came up with this kind of critical customer that was angry about returning, not being able to get a refund outside the date in our first class, and then we had it evaluate us, but the idea that these offer tools we've never seen before is so important that people are learning like your team and testing it out and going, oh, I hadn't even thought of that as a use of this tool.
Yeah. Well, we talked about conflict resolution, right? As a transferable skill that you might have from certain jobs. That is a great example of that. How are you going to deal with it if a customer comes in and they're past the time that they can get the refund? A lot of times, you're not really set up for that if you work in retail, or at least years ago when I worked in retail, nobody told me how to handle those situations. It was kind of a fly by the seat of your pants. But now we have the opportunity without having to pay a trainer who's going to cost a lot of money for people to use AI to practice those skills. And I think that is going to be a game changer as we move forward. We still have a lot of people who aren't in companies that aren't as comfortable with AI yet, but I think we're going to see more and more people get comfortable with it. And I think we need to focus on these good opportunities and not all the scary stuff that people like to think about instead.
So, for somebody in a smaller town that didn't have as many opportunities as many of us growing up, what is some advice you'd give around job hunting today and possibly learning about AI? What's your 2 cents with it? Because I meet so many wonderful people in small towns that, they have often more street sense than I do, but not as much technology knowledge. They're excellent. They might know more about a farm than I ever dreamed to know, or how to do something with a car or something else, but they didn't have the opportunity to get as much information on new technology. What would be your advice for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me also throw out there that part of the problem is a lack of broadband. That's something we're still dealing with in these small towns. So they don't even have access to the internet necessarily to play with AI and learn about it. But I do think that things are changing. It used to be in these small towns that you probably knew the person who owned the business, and that was how you could get the job, or you could at least walk in and fill out a paper application or go back and check on it. But even in our small towns, we're seeing that that's not happening as much. They may want you to submit a resume, or they want you to go online and fill out an application. And if you don't have the digital skills to make that happen, that can be a struggle for you. I think that's somewhere that AI can help. Sometimes the questions that they ask, you're not really sure how to answer. So you can throw that question into AI and say, what is it they're looking for here? What is the best way for me to answer that? I think a way that people, especially in small towns, can use this is something that I like to do with resumes. I take my resume, my generic resume that just kind of gives the jobs that I've had recently. And then you take the job description for the job that you want to apply for, and you get AI to help you customize that resume for it. And so even if you are able to hand in a personal resume, that gives you a heads up because the keywords those folks are looking for are interspersed throughout your resume now because of AI. So using it in ways like that, using it to find out maybe, what kind of jobs they've hired for in the last year. You can ask AI to look up for you, how many jobs they have had posted and what types of jobs they are. So you can know if that's even a place you want to work, right? If it looks like they've had a lot of turnover, you might want to think about looking at a different place instead. And then just getting the knowledge about jobs that are within commuting distance, but maybe aren't in your town that you hadn't thought about before, or companies that are outside of the area that you're normally in, and really getting a good idea of what it is that they do. A lot of times we drive past these places, but we don't have a clue what's happening inside and what kinds of jobs they hire for. And the internet in general can help us with that, but sometimes a Google search just gives you way too much stuff. So if you can target it with a good prompt in AI, then you might be able to find out the information you're looking for.
I think you brought up an important issue that we need to keep working on in North Carolina is what's often called the digital divide. There are definitely areas where they just don't have internet, and they may have limited cell phone, and then they may have a service where they're having to pay extra for the data, even on their smartphone, or they might be paying as they go. So having access to that is so important. I remember quite a few years ago, one of my cousins was working in the library and said the biggest thing was just having computers for people to apply to jobs. And being able to help people get started in that. And that was, they aren't coming in for books. They're coming in because they are in an area where there is no internet, or they can't afford, they'll have a smartphone, but it might be a data plan that limits it, or you can't fill out the application. And I think that's still something we need to bring attention to, that a lot of our leaders in North Carolina are working hard on. How do we get that access to it? Because in my experience as an amateur radio operator, some of these cell phone companies, it looks like they've actually cut back on some of the towers to put more in the larger cities. And I haven't taken the time to verify it, but if I were one of our representatives, I'd be riding them hard to make sure, are we getting access to them? Are we getting a tool for them that they can use?
I will say our local council on governments all are working with different programs throughout the state to address digital literacy issues and try to get some broadband in places. But we live in some very rural areas, so you might have a house and you might not have another one for 10 miles. And it's expensive to run those lines and things like that. And are they going to make their money back is something that these companies worry about. So some of the things that we've done, and we did this especially during COVID, but even since then, is like the NCWorks centers would let you could go park in their parking lot and use their Wi-Fi. A lot of people did that at fast food places as well. So it's good that you have community that can help you with that, but it would be so much better if people could just have that access at home.
Yeah, one of my jokes years ago when I started going out to Western North Carolina is it must be heaven because even GPS couldn't pick up signal sometimes. So
Yeah,
let's not just say that. The satellites back then, where you can get in some of those, what do they call them, hollers? Is that or something that
yeah,
and you can't even get a GPS signal. Just I don't know. You're on your own driving here, much less a cell phone tower. So this is so
right.
important that we work with And we keep pushing to have accessibility, because when people don't have jobs, other problems show up. When people don't have opportunities that inspire them, small businesses, like the Small Business Center I've had the joy of being involved with since 2006. And that's really from zero idea to actually getting a business going. Because when somebody starts a business and succeeds, that gives hope for other people and has the opportunity for someone to get a job. And that's, to me, such a critical aspect. But you're on the end of helping them get contacts and connections. And I'd love to talk a little bit about the good old school of networking, because that's, with all these barriers to entry in AI, that's, in our view and in our book, is beefing up the old who do you know who might know somebody, and what kind of advice you have with that, because it's tough. Because if they grew up where they knew everybody in their family, but many of them are struggling, it's hard to get a contact outside of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think networking is one of the best things people can do to find a job. And using your own networks, we often have networks we don't think about. So, who do you go to church with? Who do your parents work with? What about your friends' parents? Where do they work? So, your teachers, do they know of some people that you can connect with? Networking is really how people get their jobs. It's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be the person who owns the business where you want to get the job, but if you can make that connection to somebody that they know that can put in a word for you, right? That's another thing about small towns. People want to know who you are and what you've done, and they will ask around about you before they hire you. And now with social media, that's even easier to do. And social media is another great way to network, right? So you and I are both big on LinkedIn. We like to be on LinkedIn and see what people in our networks are up to and what they're doing. And that's a good way for people to see what you have to offer as well. We actually had several iterations of this, but we called it networking redesigned. And we would bring in people from different agencies to come together and get to know each other, because a lot of them are working with similar folks and they have similar needs, but they needed to know each other. Because if I'm working with somebody on trying to find a job, but they don't have a house, they need somebody that can help them deal with that basic need. And so through having events like that, you get to know who works in that area. And so who can I pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I have this great person that I'm working with, but they need a house because they need to be able to take a shower so that they can, you know, go to an interview or go to their job every day. And how do you make sure they have those needs met? So I'm with you. I think networking is a huge piece of how we get anything done, not just finding those job connections, but doing all of the things that we do within a community, is who you know and how you're connected to them.
Another aspect that reminds me of is also managing your digital footprint online and managing your content online. And I'm remembering many years ago, I was asked to give a presentation for like seniors on their career. And they said, oh, I'm sorry, there aren't seniors. It's a room full of like fourth graders and sixth graders. I was totally unprepared. So I thought, what am I going to say? Because, of course, what you say to a fourth grader is very different than a junior or senior. In this room full of kids, I decided to open and I said, how many of you like your privileges taken away? And I read, and they went, none, no one raised their hand. I said, well, what you put on that Facebook and those other things, because they were just old enough, whatever group it was, they were on Facebook or whatever was then, whatever you put on that can affect having opportunities in the future. I'm still quite proud of it, because what else am I going to say? I had to basically throw out my presentation, make up something, but that's still relevant today to understand. And I know counselors and stuff are working with the students to try to say, hey, pay attention to that. Just, well, it's my personal Facebook, so no one else's business. Well, unfortunately, it's not. It's not. What you put out there is is showing the type of person you are. And that's making now we have something you do in person. It used to be, well, how's Johnny? Well, he's always been good. He helps out with the Sunday school. I've known him since he was 5 years old. He got in trouble once, but he got straightened out. Well, now we have a digital footprint to manage and be aware of. So talk a little bit about that for people to be cognizant of it. I'm sure you have conversations. You're very because the funding and stuff, you're very careful to honor their privacy, of course. I want to just say that. But also having that conversation is pretty important too.
It really is. And a conversation that we've had even before social media became so big was your email addresses, right? Because people have some crazy looking email addresses. You can't use those with employers. But I also have the conversation with high schoolers a lot when I am meeting with them about what they're putting online, what they're talking about, what they're sharing, even if they're not saying anything, if they're reposting something that may not help them when they're trying to get a job. There are HR folks that will look at your Facebook page. I was a recruiter for many years, and I would look at people's Facebook pages to see if what they were telling me matched up with what I was seeing online. And so it is really important to make sure there's lots of employers that are doing that. Not just while you're looking for a job, but when you're on the job too. So many people get in trouble talking about work stuff on their social media that is not appropriate for social media and can get them in a lot of trouble if somebody from work sees it. So yeah, you have to be really careful about all of that stuff.
Yeah, like a rant on why I hate my current job. Well, the employer sees that, they can solve that for you. You can do
That's
it.
right. You need a new one.
Yeah, one of our slide deck things we have in one of our job things is I saw a political post online and I've changed my opinion, said no one. And so watching those rants that go on that are, because all those are creating an permanent footprint online, if you know it or not.
Yeah, for sure. And I see people do that more on LinkedIn than I used to. It used to be like LinkedIn was just for professional stuff, but now you're starting to see people post their personal views and things like that, which is surprising. And I'm not sure. I'm hopeful that it'll go away, that they'll find another another social media place to have those conversations. Because I think what we learn on LinkedIn is important. That's where you learn about the different programs people are doing and the different research that's happening and data and all that good stuff. I don't want to learn about your, birthday party or your political views there necessarily.
Yeah, it used to be people at least tried to be anonymous when they ranted online. Now they seem to forget that everyone sees their name.
Yeah.
We had somebody was mad because a few of us didn't hire him for something, and he got on our Facebook page and put rants and went, we know who Bob is. It's like I can see you, and they are losing track of that, right?
Yeah.
So now you're spotted. I'd like you to talk a little bit about the great process of what you all do, because there's a lot of steps your team goes through, from onboarding people to the process to do it, to keep track of it, to honor the funding and everything else. Is huge amount of steps that are required to really make sure you do the right thing, that it has an audit trail for safety for people, which you talk about. If someone says they're interested, the process they go through to get involved with your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be happy to share that. But let me also point out that I don't work for NCWorks. I work with NCWorks. So I work with them, and I work with educators. I work with community college folks. I'm kind of working with all of them in one loop. So I'm not the expert on the NCWorks processes, but I can tell you what I do know. So when you are needing help with anything job related, so you need help with your resume, you're looking for a job, you need some mock interview help, you can go into any NCWorks Center in North Carolina. They are free. They're not free. They're government funded. Our tax dollars fund these centers. And you can go in. You usually have to give a little bit of information to sign in. Like you might have to put in your social security number or something like that. and then they will connect you with a career advisor. And then depending on what it is that you need is which career advisor they're going to connect you with. So if you need training to get to your job goal, you want to be a registered nurse. Well, you can't just go do that without some training. So they would then put you probably with a career advisor that handles WIOA funding, right? So that's those federal dollars that are able to help pay for some types of training. Like for registered nurses, most of our WIOA programs will pay for that. They don't always pay for other programs, maybe that don't have as good of data behind them. But they can pay for that as well as some transportation help, because I mean, you got to get back and forth to school, maybe childcare if you have kids that they can help with. To do that, though, you have to be eligible. So that means you have to supply more paperwork, your birth certificate, your social security card. You have to go through different assessments to make sure that registered nurse is suitable for you. They don't want to get you into a program, have you start it, and then say, oh, I don't like blood. Well, registered nurse is not going to be the best job for you if you don't like blood. So we need to figure that out ahead of time before you get into that program. So a career advisor's job is really to build a rapport with the person who's walking in the door, try to help them figure out what it is that they need. People come in sometimes thinking they already know. I heard truck driver is a good job. That's what I want to do. But truck driver is not a good job for everybody, and it may not be for that person. So that career advisor can kind of go through some assessments with them and walk them through what it takes to be a truck driver and help them decide if that really is the right goal for them or if they need a different goal. And then they can help them along that path. The really cool thing about this program, I think, is that they follow them for a certain amount of time after they've started the job. So they help them get through the training, get into that role, and then they are still there for support while they are learning that job. Because we know the first 90 days of a job can be tough. It's all new stuff, it's all new people. And it's good to have that person that you can call that you've already built that connection with to say, hey, how do I handle this situation I wasn't quite prepared for? And then maybe they can say, hey, go to your AI and use these prompts and ask these questions on how to answer, how to deal with those situations. So that's what career advisors do. They work closely and really get to know these people and help them figure out what it is that they want their goal to be.
That's just so excellent. And I love that they stay with them while they start that first 90 days, because if they don't, let's say they got into a brand new job. Let's say they just worked at a fast food place and now they've got a job where they show up for work. There's just a lot of assumptions that they won't know, and they may not have had the exposure growing up to, and say, so kind of level setting what's appropriate and go, well, that's acceptable what you're doing, or no, that's not acceptable, we've got a problem now. They're asking you to do something illegal, you probably need to talk to someone professionally or something. Those things that a lot of us take for granted aren't always there, those reference points. And that's why
right.
that follow on's so great. Brandi, tell the people a little bit about your background, because you have such a rich, diverse background. It's like you were born for what you're doing now. Not that you can't do much more, but it's pretty extraordinary. Now that I've known you for a while, and I'll put your LinkedIn link below so they can check it out. But it's quite an exciting journey you've been on that got you here.
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy. I started working through a staffing agency in a manufacturing company in rural Eastern North Carolina. And when that job ended, that staffing company put me into a role where I was in their administrative, like I was actually working for the staffing company. And then I started getting to do the fun stuff, recruiting for these companies and, going out on job sites and seeing the work that they were doing and how they were doing it. So I really got to know what is happening on the shop floor of a lot of the different manufacturing places in our area, which was all, really cool. Then I finally finished my bachelor's degree. We're not going to talk about how many years that took, but I finally did finish. And then I went to work for an organization that helped people with disabilities to get jobs in the community. And so I would go out and I would work with employers and help set expectations for them for what the folks that I was working with would be able to do. I would actually job coach my the folks that I was working with when they got that job. So I spent time learning how to work the photo booth at Target back in the day when they had those, or work in recycling in the recycling center out at ECVC. Oh gosh, cleaning hotel rooms. So I got to help people learn how to do these jobs and put things in place for them to make it a little easier. And I worked there for quite a while. And then I got kind of tired of, when you've worked direct services with people like that for a while, it's easy to get burnout because you just put a lot of yourself into it. And I thought I needed to do something different. So I went and sold advertising for a newspaper, which was a lot of fun, right? I got to be really creative. But I'm not really a good salesperson. So that didn't go for so long. I went back to staffing and got to do some more of that fun recruitment. And I said, this is not really what I want to do. So let me go to grad school. So I went to grad school. I got my master's degree in sociology. Um, and I was looking for a role building community. And I had no idea that there was an opportunity to build community around career pathways until I actually went to an interview because after grad school, I'm looking for a job. I went to an interview at NCWorks and I didn't get hired for that job. And a couple months later, one of the people from that interview called me and said, "Hey, I have this other role I think you would be perfect for." And it's the role that I'm in now. And I'm with you. I kind of feel like I might have been born for this role. But when I joked with them about, "Hey, you didn't hire me to work in your career center, but you think I'm good for this one," they were like, "We knew that you were here for bigger and better things." And so it was really kind of a interesting way that I fell into this. And through this role, I've been able to connect with people all across the 20 counties that we serve in our education system, higher ed, in our communities, in our employers, and really just kind of look for those gaps. Where do folks where are there not already connections that need to be made? And how do we make those connections? And how do we build programs that really help people see what's available to them? Because I grew up around here and my entire life, and still now people say, "There's nowhere to work here. There's no good jobs." And that's just not true. We've got some companies that pay really well, and you may or may not need a lot of training to get into those jobs. You just have to know what's out there, or at least connect yourself with somebody who knows what's out there. Do that networking to get to that job that may be the one that was made for you. So yeah, it's kind of like a full circle moment to have kind of gone through all of that. And I'll tell you, I didn't want to be working in employment. When I was in staffing, I was like, I do not want to be in this world. This is not the world I want to be in. And yet here I am engrossed in this world. And I feel like I live, eat, and breathe it now.
It's such a great story, but it is so rewarding when you see someone who uh, sees new hope in their life and gets themselves into a situation where they can take care of their family better and help their community and really kind of reinvent themselves, because a lot of that's what it involves. Especially if someone didn't have as much opportunities, they have to kind of almost build a new role to step into, and having guidance that helps them do that, and then letting it anchor in and making new friends and contacts. And one of the things you brought up in this whole journey that's so important for people to realize in the job market is you interviewed for one job, didn't get it, and then they came back and contact you. And that's what I want to say is, if you don't succeed in an interview, keep the door open with a positive attitude, because I guarantee, I know you wouldn't do it, but what if you go, "Well, if you don't want me, forget you," they wouldn't have called you back. And so
That's right.
just remember, sometimes they can't tell you everything that's going on. So how you handle yourself in one might help with another. And I've known many times where someone will build some contacts through an interview, and they might connect on LinkedIn or otherwise, but they find out something, and then they're able to stay connected, and a better opportunity more than once shows up. But because how they handled them in the one level, they went to the other. And I'll end on a great story I learned from one of our big restaurants in town. I'll let them stay confidential, but it's one of the biggest steak places in the area. And the founder said that the woman at the front desk where you come in to get signed in or check if you have a reservation carries the most power of the entire hiring. Because if that person comes up asking for a job and doesn't treat them well, they get a negative ding right off the bat. So remembering who we are with other people. And you know this story of how do you treat, if you go to someone for lunch, how do they treat the wait staff? And I can just imagine both of us, I love the wait staff. You know, they're working hard. I want to take care of them. And I've helped many even improve their career in it. But knowing everywhere you go, you have a chance to show your character. And that's so important because many jobs, they go, I can train them in the skills, but can I train them to treat people well, to handle problems and address them? They need to develop some of that on their own. And I think that might have been what occurred in that first interview. They were checking you out and they might have known in the other one. And they went, you know, she's matching up. Let's bring her in.
You made a great point right there, Martin. Employability skills are so important and they go across all different jobs. So knowing how to work with your teammates and having good communication skills and a good work ethic and initiative, all of those things, those are the things employers ask for more than anything else. They can often teach you the technical skills of the job that they need you to do, but you already need to come in knowing how to talk to people and how to do things. And that's a big focus for us with all of the different groups that I work with. We really try to help build up those employability skills so that people are really ready for those jobs when they get out there.
I think that's the most important. I do want to say I've worked with a lot of people who say, I'm an introvert. I'm not comfortable talking to people. And what I want to say is it might take more courage to get out of your shell. But I've just learned that when they make that courageous journey and when they kind of step into their new role and do it, they often are heard more than some of us that like being an extrovert. So I just want to inspire, if someone's hearing this, do the hard work. Maybe if you have like a Toastmasters or something where you get comfortable speaking to people, or go somewhere where you aren't worried how people view and practice just looking someone in the eye and talking to them. You know, I mean, be safe, of course, but you know, it might be something at a hiking event or something different, and start doing a self-assessment of the communication skills, conflict skills. You have to develop some of those, how to handle problems, how to regulate your emotions. Go, oh, I'm offended, but that doesn't mean I have to respond. And those take real work. All of us have different degrees, and often when people have some less opportunities, it's easier to get triggered by things. And so they have to even work harder, because I've even known people who've helped people in the prison system that had horrific upbringings, and they had to kind of learn to go, oh, I want to respond here, but I don't have to. It's harder for them, but when they go through it, it builds such deeper character in the long run.
It really does. Yeah.
Anything you want to close on? I think we covered a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, we did. Now, I will say when I got into this role, my son was just starting high school. And so it was perfect timing for me to learn all about this stuff so that I could share that with him. And so I encourage people to work with the young people in your life, like not just for the people out there who are trying to find a new job for themselves, but think about the young folks around you and help them to understand those employability skills and those transferable skills and how to network so that they can make the next step.
That's a great closing remark. And we'll put links below to learn more about the NENC Career Pathways. I'll put links below. I'll also put your LinkedIn profile as well. And I'll put, of course, our book, Job Hunting in the AI Era, that I'm honored that you gave it a thumbs up on. So appreciate it. And thanks for all you're doing to help towns and counties and giving people hope. And also big thanks to your team. We we've been so honored to work with them. We just love their questions and their comments. They really have their heart in their work and really see people in need, and they appreciate that they get to use our state funding to be able to help them, and that it's a real honor that they're part of it and make a difference in people's lives.
I don't know if you realize this, but you ushered in the social media wave for our community as well. We got you to do a training for us in Pitt County, and we brought in NCWorks and educators, folks who were not on social media yet. And now these folks all have social media presence for their organizations, and they share the work that they're doing. So you've kind of helped us along this path for many, many years. And so I appreciate it.
And I hope to do it for many, many more. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take it. Awesome. Thank you, Martin. I really appreciate this.